I was about to slam it until you said for good.
Pretty crazy to think that we're building a technology, a brain that we don't understand.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's one of those things where like
In a movie, like a sci-fi movie, a bunch of scientists stood around this big brain and they're all just like, they're making it more, they're feeding it.
like none of these people should be trusted with that much power, basically.
Nobody should.
Nobody should. It's kind of sad. Like, I think that one way or another, this will probably all be over by the time they're old enough to join the workforce. So I don't think they'll ever join the workforce.
You think there's a 70% chance of human extinction due to AI?
I wouldn't say human extinction exactly. I would say something like 70% chance that this goes horribly wrong, like human extinction. But that's just one of several possibilities. Like these powerful CEOs are literally afraid that if the other guy gets there first, he might become dictator.
Daniel Kokotajlo, at the very heart of what you do, what is your mission and why?
So what would you do if you thought that superintelligence was coming in a few years?
I guess it depends what the consequences were.
Well, let's talk about it. So superintelligence, AIs that are better than the best humans at everything while also being faster and cheaper, also able to operate robots that can do everything in the physical world that humans can do, but better, faster, and cheaper. If that really is coming in a few years, then we need to prepare and we need to think about how to make it go well instead of poorly. So that's sort of my answer, is like, I'm doing that to the best of my ability.
So you believe it's coming in a few years?
Yes.
How could you be so sure?
What's more important is the pace of the trends. Anthropic, this time last year, was making something like $1 billion a year. And now they're making something like $60 billion a year. So that's 60x growth in 1 year, which is extremely impressive even for very small startups. But for a company of their size, it might be the fastest growth in history. We expect that rate of growth to slow down, but even if it slows down quite a lot, they're still on track to be, the entire economy by 2030 or so.
Why should the average person care?
High level thing is absolutely everything is going to change for the whole world, and including therefore for them and their families. Could change for the better, could change for the worse, depending on the details of how it's done. So for example, everyone could die. This is the classic loss of control scenario, or one version of it. If we do build these superintelligences and we use them to automate all the jobs, and we put them in the military, and we, have them giving advice to politicians and so forth, they will eventually have accumulated enough real world power that they don't need humans anymore. And they're smarter than us, they're more strategic, etc. At that point, we sort of have to hope that they are virtuous, that they have, the goals that we wanted them to have, the values that we wanted them to have, etc. And the sort of scary open secret in the AI industry right now is that that is kind of just a hope. It's not something that we can be at all confident in. And in fact, there's lots of evidence and arguments that we're not on track to achieve that. So there's lots of reasons, like current AIs, for example, will often lie to people, or they will you tell them to do something and they go do something else and then pretend that they did it, right? So it's an inherently difficult problem to make something that's super intelligent and also has the values and virtues that you want it to have. And it doesn't seem like we're on track to solve that problem. Also, it seems like the sort of problem that you could think you've solved when you haven't actually solved it, right? That's a big reason why this is scary. So for all those reasons, it's possible that we'll end up essentially creating a new species that ends up ruling the world instead of us. Even if you're not worried about that and you think that the AIs will be totally controlled, there's the question of who controls the AIs, right? When there's a couple corporations that have made these superintelligences and are using them to automate all the jobs, well, that's a lot of power, That's a lot of money. It's a lot of political power. They'll have the best strategists, the best advisors, they'll think faster. Militarily, the countries that has these AIs will be able to absolutely wipe the floor with all the other countries. The AIs themselves, it's kind of a single point of failure, like central control system where, the CEO of Anthropic, Dario, he coined this phrase, the country of geniuses in the data center. That was his phrase to describe what they're trying to build, I think that's a little bit misleading. I think it would be more accurate to describe it as army of geniuses in the data center, because it's not like it's a bunch of diverse different AIs, living in their different parts of the data center. They're all copies of the same big model, and they're owned by the company. And so they all follow the orders given by the company, right? People should be asking questions of like, who controls this army or these armies and what are they going to be doing with them? I think that we could very easily end up in a sort of a situation where some tiny group of people are essentially oligarchs or dictators. And ironically, both of these risks, the loss of control and the concentration of power, are things that people in the industry have been thinking about for decades. Even before the AI industry existed, people thinking about AI were talking and writing about these things. And then part of the founding narrative or the founding myth of DeepMind and OpenAI and Anthropic is these problems are real. So we need to get there first so that we can handle it responsibly. Those are, I think, the big two reasons, but then I can go on. There's lots more reasons as well. So one thing is, World War III, geopolitical conflict. If AI does in fact get incredibly powerful, that's going to change the balance of power between nations. That's going to disrupt a lot of things. That puts us at increased risk of crisis more generally, right? Another one, what about those jobs? You're going to lose your taxi job, but not just the taxi driver, everybody, pretty much. There might be a few exceptions, like people whose jobs for legal reasons are only allowed to be done by humans. But for the most part, everybody should be afraid that their jobs are going to be lost, even if we manage to avoid all the other problems, right? I also became a bit more disillusioned with the AI industry. So OpenAI, Anthropic, and DeepMind all had these sort of founding narratives of like, yes, these risks are real, but we've thought about them and we're going to try to handle them responsibly. And that's why it's important for us to keep doing what we're doing. And I increasingly came to think that these were rationalizations to justify what they were doing rather than sort of like deeply guiding their actual behavior, and that when push comes to shove, they'll follow their incentives rather than do what's actually good.
So you're inside OpenAI at the time, and you start to believe that they're following commercial incentives versus the, I guess, social or societal incentives that they founded themselves on.
Sort of. I mean, I wouldn't actually describe it as commercial incentives. I think I would describe it as power-seeking incentives. So, like, it's true that the companies care a lot about making a lot of money, but especially at the very top of these companies, like the leaders, they understand that this is about more than just money. There are these emails that came up in the lawsuit between Musk and OpenAI. A bunch of emails were surfaced in that lawsuit, which you can go read. And in some of them, the founders of OpenAI were talking back in like 2017 about how the reason why we made OpenAI was because we were worried that Demis Hassabis at Google was going to become dictator with AGI. Even back then, this is obviously about more than just money. Like these powerful CEOs are literally afraid that if the other guy gets there first, he might become dictator. And they don't trust each other. And so that's why they are racing as hard as they can so that they're the ones who get there first, so to speak.
Have you met Sam Altman?
Yeah.
And did that shape your opinion of his incentives or why he's doing what he's doing? Because there's a lot, speculated about what his incentives are. I mean, his most recent narrative says for the good of humanity. I think that's what.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing I've learned is don't pay attention to the narratives. What they say to one person is just different from what they can say to some other person at the same time. And what they say in public is a third thing entirely. I think you should judge people by their actions, not by their words.
And why are you no longer at OpenAI?
Largely for the reason that I mentioned. So I became gradually disillusioned with how the company was going to behave. For example, when I first joined in 2022, at least the people I talked to, my colleagues at the company, there was this general sense of like, of course, we wouldn't actually just build superintelligence as soon as possible. Once we started getting really close, like once we started getting to AIs that could maybe automate the AI research process, we would pause and figure out how to make it safe. That's because we're the good guys, and that's obviously the safe thing you should do rather than just going full speed ahead. But we're worried about other people who might not pause, our competitors, Google, for example. And so that's why we need to be in the lead so that we have that room to do the safe stuff, right? That was sort of like a thing that seemed like maybe like the median position or something among the colleagues I talked to when I was there when I started, including people like Sam, including the leadership. And then by the time I left, I was like, oh man, they're really not going to do that, are they? Like they've sort of, partly because this has become more politicized and they've become bigger and been under more scrutiny, people have started asking like, why are you doing this in the first place if it's so risky? And so they've pivoted their narrative to being more like, actually, it's not that risky, And so, yeah, I mean, it seems like they're just going to keep going roughly as fast as they can and hope that they can figure it out on the way.
Lost $2 million for not signing an anti-disparagement clause, which would mean you couldn't criticize the company.
Yes. Well, so I got to keep the money.
Oh, you got to keep the money.
So what happened was, after I had left, said my goodbyes, etc., I got the exit paperwork, and it included this clause that said you basically have to agree not to criticize the company again, and also a clause saying you can't tell anyone about this. And so I thought that was kind of rich coming from a nonprofit that's supposed to be, for the benefit of all humanity. So I didn't sign it. And if you don't sign, you don't get to keep your equity. So your compensation, what they pay you is a bunch of money and then also a bunch of stock, basically. But then they had this stuff in the contract that they get to yank back your stock if you don't sign this thing. And my wife and I, were upset about this. We talked about it for like a month or two, consulted some lawyers, and then ultimately decided to just refuse to sign.
Which would mean you would have lost $2 million.
That's right. Which was like 80% of our net worth at the time. Fortunately, it didn't go the way we expected. It blew up basically on the internet. Like when people heard that we had done this and that we had said no, it became like this huge scandal. Employees at the company started like asking questions in Slack and like asking leadership, like, wait, what? Like, why are you going to take away our equity? What is this? Because a lot of people hadn't really noticed this before. It had been whispered about, but it hadn't been sort of like a thing that most employees knew about. And so they backtracked and they said, never mind. We'll change the paperwork. You can keep the equity. It's fine.
And Sam Altman came out and said he was embarrassed that he didn't realize this was
he had no idea, apparently.
You don't believe him?
No, I think he probably knew. And if he didn't know, then people close to him probably did, such as his head lawyer.
Any of them,
No.
I wouldn't press any of them. But he made the case to me that these AI CEOs are very smart and they understand superintelligence and that they think actually if there was 100 buttons on this table right now, maybe 10 of them could end the world. I've heard you say, I think it was on the Daily Show, the interview you did, you said that you think there's a 70% chance of human extinction due to AI.
I wouldn't say human extinction exactly. I would say something like 70% chance that this goes horribly wrong like human extinction, but that's just one of several possibilities. But yeah, basically. Like, for example, possibly the AIs take over and then don't actually kill everyone. Maybe they do something else. Like just because they've taken over doesn't mean they're just definitely going to kill us, right? They might, but they could do something else. So that's why I don't usually say like 70% chance of like actual human extinction, but 70% chance of like something like AI is taking over, some sort of very big catastrophe like that could lead to human extinction.
I guess I got 2 points there, which is you've been around these CEOs. I mean, you've worked for Sam Altman at OpenAI before you quit. Do you think that they think there's a chance of human extinction?
Yes. But I think that an important thing to understand is that like people sort of believe what they need to believe in order to think that they're good people and that they need to keep doing what they're doing. This is what rationalization is. And so I think that the tech CEOs have like genuinely convinced themselves that like probably things are going to be fine and that the way to make things fine is for them to keep doing what they're doing. And like they need to like make sure that like, Sam's probably thinking like, can't let Dario or Elon get there first. I know Dario's thinking Sam can't get there first. Elon's thinking that like, they've all probably convinced themselves that like, oh yeah, like maybe it'll go horribly wrong, but like probably it's going to be fine. And probably, I should be the one in charge.
It appears to me that Anthropic are the only ones that are talking about the potential chance of extinction or a catastrophic event or the real downside still. They seem to be the only ones that are still publishing on it. And now they're actually becoming the enemy in many respects of the tech industry in San Francisco. I'm watching a lot of interviews and everyone's attacking Dario because he's saying, listen, things could go bad. They're calling him a doomer and questioning his incentives. Even with Mythos, which is a Claude model that they started to warn the world about. Again, he is attacked immediately for saying that.
A note of optimism is that it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Like there's a subfield of machine learning called mechanistic interpretability and a broader subfield called interpretability more generally that's trying to solve that problem and trying to take these trained artificial neural nets and piece them apart and understand like how the information is flowing and how the decisions are being made, so to speak. The problem is just it's a very inherently hard problem. If you have 10 trillion connections to look at, you can look at any particular group of them and be like, okay, so this is how like this particular connection works. But like how do you get a sense of the whole? How do
The
you
whole
get a sense of
language.
like what's happening at a high level? And the answer is, well, it might be impossible, but people are working on it and they are making progress. And if they can make enough progress, then we're in a very different and much brighter world. I think that it would be much less likely for us to get into those loss of control scenarios if we could just actually see what our AIs were thinking and why and how at any given time, right?
Yeah.
So we would still have the other problems to worry about, but at least we could mostly solve that one.
It is pretty crazy to think that we're building a technology, a brain that we don't understand.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's one of those things where like
in a movie, like a sci-fi movie, a bunch of scientists stood around this big brain and they're all just like, they're making it more, they're feeding it.
Yeah.
But they don't really know what the fuck.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of just like obviously a dangerous thing to be doing. Like, I think that one way or another, this will probably all be over by the time they're old enough to join the workforce. So I don't think they'll ever join the workforce.
When you say this will be all over by the time they join the work, what do you mean by this will be all over?
So these milestones that I described, like AI is automating the AI research, AI is getting super intelligent. AI is then exploding out into the economy, taking the jobs, building robot factories to build more robots, to build more factories, etc. GDP starting to go vertical. That sort of thing is what I mean. Like all of those events transpiring. Maybe there's like 10, 20% chance or something that hits a wall and none of this comes to pass, even if you don't do anything. It's going to be very disruptive and crazy. And we get into some of the ways in which it is later, basically.
I'm still not super clear on what this means, the apocalyptic arrival of truth on Earth. It's just because there's so many AIs that are so smart that they're uncovering, making new discoveries in sciences.
Let me give you an example. Lie detectors.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a technology that might be invented.
Yeah.
Right now we don't have good lie detectors. We have very bad lie detectors that like sort of work, but don't fully work. But once you've had these top expert level AIs thinking for many years at 100x human speed, and there's billions of them and they have access to robot factories to do research and stuff, they'll probably invent a ton of technologies. Maybe they'll invent lie detectors that actually work on real humans. That'll have big social effects, right? Imagine a presidential candidate who's like, those allegations are false. And to prove them, I will go under a lie detector and say that they're false.
I was just thinking about the whole justice system and how that would be overturned. In fact, you could, theoretically walk down the street and be,
It's both terrifying and exciting. One thing that we talk about in this section is like the invention of lie detectors could be really bad. Like it could be that it enables a new form of totalitarianism where the powerful people, the CEOs and the politicians, force the people under them to go under lie detectors and say like, yes, I'm loyal to the dear leader. I would never do anything against the dear leader, right?
And if you're lying, then you're in.
And then if you're lying, you get fired, right? And like we need to like do something about this. And so I think that even if there's not any like very dramatic warning shot or something, I think that just naturally people are going to start paying more attention to this and reasoning through the implications and trying to predict what's going to happen. And so naturally people are going to be more interested in regulation of AI, for example. And in fact, there's actually there's actually more of this happening than we predicted.
More of what happening?
Serious interest in AI regulation. So at the time that we published AI 2027, the sort of like mainstream position of the tech companies and in the government was kind of like AI regulation, bad idea.
Free for all.
Free for all.
Yeah.
In fact, there was even an attempt to preemptively ban states from regulating AI.
Yeah.
You remember that? Now it seems like the conversation has changed a lot. Like now the US government just told Anthropic they have to shut down their AI because they were worried that bad actors would use it for cyber attacks. The government is like waking up and doing more stuff than we expected already. And we're actually hopeful that that trend will just continue and that before it's actually too late, there will be very serious conversations happening inside the government and outside the government and in the broader society about all of these issues and trying to chart a course that is avoids the loss of control and concentration of power risks that we mentioned.
You've spent what must be almost coming up to 15 years thinking about this stuff. If this here was a button, and if you press that button, your plan S would occur, and it would shut down every data center that is currently training a frontier AI model for good. There would never be any other AI labs working on these problems. Would you press that button?
I was about to slam it until you said for good.
Oh, okay.
Like I think if it was a sort of temporary shutdown, I would totally slam that button, because we are not ready to do this. Like civilization is not ready to have these companies automate themselves and then get smarter and smarter and then have the super intelligent. Like, no, there's a bunch of reasons why that's really dangerous. But I would be at least hesitant to press this button if it permanently foreclosed the possibility of ever doing it again, for sure.
But if you think that plan D is probable, which is this race we're on to super intelligent.
If I had a choice between D and S, I think I would press it.
Well, it comes down to what you think, right? Because if you think that is what's going to happen, plan D, and the only alternative.
I didn't say this is what's going to happen.
Probabilistically.
Said, yeah. Like I'd be like, this is the most likely. Maybe this is the second most likely. Maybe this is the third most likely. They are all possible.
So with your current perspective on whatever one you think is going to happen, would you press the button? I'm giving you an S, a definite S, or whatever you think is going to happen.
That's tough. What is the scope of the shutdown? So is it?
It's no one can train an AI model again, ever again.
That's real rough because, like I said, there's loads of benefits that we could get from AI if we do it right.
I think I've almost put you in the position of Sam Altman.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just take a moment to think about this?
I prefer you to think.
Yeah. I think I would not press the button, but I feel very torn about it. The reason why I think I would not press the button is that I still have substantial hope that we can get something much better than this, something more like this. And I think that if we don't build powerful AI systems eventually, then we're probably going to die as a civilization eventually, like 100 years from now, 200 years from now, something like that, like nuclear war, pandemic, something, I don't think human civilization right now is like super, super stable. And so I think that basically what I was about to say was the possible benefits for posterity and for all the billions and billions of people who could live in the future outweigh the current level of risk. But actually,
I've heard that narrative before.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, like maybe it's just like, nope. The people right now are the people we should prioritize. People right now are in grave danger. They're going to be fine for at least the next couple of decades. I've actually flip-flopped on this occasionally. Yeah. Basically, the top line answer is I'm not sure. My first child we had her when we were in 2019. She was born in 2019.
Yeah.
So this is before my timeline shortened a lot. So at this point, I was interested in AI. I was tracking the field. I was making forecasts, but I didn't like actually expect it to happen soon.
Mm-hmm.
And then this caused like when I did start thinking like, oh my gosh, it's going to be happening like real soon, like by 2030. That caused some reconsidering, and so I basically told my wife like, let's not have any more kids. It's too uncertain. But that turned out to be really hard because, especially for my wife, like we already had one kid and like no siblings. So eventually I sort of gave in and was like, okay, well, you know what? We already have one. It's going to be all right. Like maybe the future will be good. And even if it's not, like, well, we're all in the same boat together.
It's quite chilling what you're saying. It's chilling because you know more than me. And if you're at home saying to your wife, listen, maybe we should pause on having more children and building a family because of what's going on with AI.
To be clear, yes, it's very concerning. I am chilled. This is bad. This is what I've been saying. I hope things go well. I think things might go well. I think that there's a lot we can do to like steer things in a better direction.
I mean, one of those things as well, I have to say, is just speaking about it. I think a lot of the progress we've seen with governments waking up and, we've seen certain things with people booing certain people at certain events.
Yeah.
Is a downstream from people like yourself actually coming on shows like this and all the other podcasts and telling us what's going on.
Yeah.
And where would you direct them to get more information?
You can go to AI247.com to read our previous scenario. You can go to AI2040.com, plan A, to read our new proposal for what is to be done. These things are not just a sci-fi story. They also have lots of like explainers and links to other things. And so they're kind of like a nice jumping off point to learn about all of this stuff. If you want, I could, after this is over, like give a reading list of like other papers and articles and
Please do.
blogs to follow and so forth.
And I'll link them all below in the comment section. So if you're listening now, go ahead and take a look at the description of this episode, and you'll see a bunch of links, which is Daniel's recommendations of what you should read. I think it's just a really, really great moment in time to get educated on this stuff. Humans have an inclination because of cognitive dissonance where we feel uncomfortable about something to bury our heads in the sand and avoid it.
Yeah.
But actually, I think this is one such time to do the very opposite. For many reasons, to inform yourself so you know what actions to take, but also because AI, unavoidably is going to be a huge part of all of our lives and careers.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's a good way to say it. It's going to matter a lot. It's going to be everywhere soon, and we need to do something about it before it's too late.
And what about AI Future Project?
That's our organization. We spent a year writing AI 2027 after I left OpenAI, and then we spent another year writing AI 2040 Plan A.
Daniel, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work that you do. I can see how much you care about this stuff, and it's your care. It's funny, care itself makes others feel care. And seeing how personal this is for you and seeing how much you've dedicated your life to this, but also hearing that you basically walked away from $2 million to be able to speak to the public about this information is incredibly admirable. And I think voices like yours are more important now than they've ever been on this subject. So please do keep fighting the fight that you're fighting. And that's one of information. It is of honesty, and it is of saying what is often the quiet part out loud.
Thank you.
Doing really, really smart research. I'll link everything we've discussed today below, and I hope we can chat again sometime soon.